Welcome back to ILTV. For a new week, central and northern Israel are again being subjected to heavy ongoing rocket fire from Hezbollah in Lebanon. This morning, a barrage of 25 rockets was fired at the Upper Galilee. Some of the projectiles were intercepted, and the rest struck open areas. Over the weekend, over 200 rockets targeted northern Israel, and no major injuries were reported. The city of Nahariya was particularly hard hit in recent weeks, with 4 fatalities from Hezbollah rocket fire. Later in the day, a barrage of dozens of rockets was fired at central Israel, setting off sirens in Herzliya, Tel Aviv, Petah Tikva, and other central cities. One man was severely injured in Kfar Blum in a rocket attack, leaving 9 injured total in multiple hits throughout the country. Multiple buildings and cars were damaged in the attack, including a hit on Haifa in an apartment building, a direct hit on a Nahariya residential building, damage to homes in Petah Tikva, and severe damage to a home in Renatia, prompting a temporary pause in flights at Ben Gurion Airport. This morning, breaking news from Abu Dhabi revealed that the Emirates authorities have discovered what is believed to be the body of Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, a Chabad emissary based in the UAE and a Moldovan Israeli citizen who had been missing since Wednesday. Israeli intelligence reported that Kogan was kidnapped by 3 Uzbek nationals who followed him from the kosher grocery store he manages. Kogan then drove about 90 minutes outside of Abu Dhabi, where he then disappeared and his phone was switched to off. It is believed that the Uzbek group behind the attack was hired by the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has a history of kidnappings and attempted kidnappings throughout the region, in particular the UAE. After the alleged attack, authorities believe the attackers fled to Turkey. Kogan's disappearance is being treated as a terror incident, as the Prime Minister's office and Israeli security services stated this morning. Israel also emphasized a moderate travel warning to all citizens, recommending they avoid non-essential travel to the UAE due to the terror threat. Rabbi Kogan was married 6 months ago and has become a prominent figure in the Jewish community in the UAE. His wife is the niece of Rabbi Gavriel Holtzberg, who was killed in the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks at Chabad. Our condolences to his family. And now in Amman, a gunman was shot dead and 3 policemen injured after a shooting near the Israeli embassy in Jordan. There were no reported injuries at the embassy. Officials say police shot a gunman who fired at a police patrol, and investigations were ongoing. Police are describing the incident as a terror attack. Authorities have yet to announce the identity of the gunman. Jordanian police cordoned off an area near the heavily Israeli-policed embassy grounds after gunshots were heard. The area has been a flashpoint for frequent anti-Israel demonstrations. While Special Envoy Amos Hochstein has come and gone from the region without a mediated ceasefire agreement being reached between Israel and Hezbollah. The IDF has been pounding Hezbollah in Beirut and today ordered additional South Lebanese towns to evacuate. We have more from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
In a sign that the war was expanding, the IDF today warned Lebanese civilians to evacuate to north of the Hourly River. Lebanese civilians in 5 towns were given the order as the war in Lebanon was moving northward. The Air Force continued pounding Hezbollah targets in Beirut. The Air Force conducted a massive strike in central Beirut, and the reported target was Hezbollah military commander Talal Hamia. Hamia became commander of operations after the IDF killed Commander Ibrahim Akil in September. Other targets were hit in and around Beirut throughout the weekend. Airstrikes targeted more than 45 launchers throughout South Lebanon, used recently to fire rockets at Israel. The Air Force struck in Sur on the coast, hitting Hezbollah intelligence infrastructure, weapons warehouses, and other assets used for attacks into Israel. Special U.S. Envoy Amos Hochstein has come and gone from his ceasefire mediation efforts without an agreement being reached between Israel and Hezbollah. But defense officials say that major chances for a truce remain. Lebanese officials at Hezbollah's demand are seeking changes in the U.S.-backed proposal. The U.S.-backed agreement would see Hezbollah withdraw north of the Litani River, an IDF withdrawal from South Lebanon, and the Lebanese army taking responsibility to prevent recurring attacks. Hochstein met with Defense Minister Katz and Chief of Staff Halevi to discuss the details of the negotiations. Earlier, Hochstein held talks in Beirut with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, representing Lebanon. A defense ministry official said Hezbollah is open to a deal and the unsolved issues are being discussed. U.S. officials told Israeli media they believe an agreement can still be reached within days.
Well, Hamas claims that an Israeli female hostage has been killed in northern Gaza. The IDF is checking the report, which comes amid Defense Ministry optimism that a partial hostage deal is closer than it has been in a year and comes 1 year after the last mediated hostage exchange that freed 50 captives. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The IDF said it's examining information after Hamas released footage showing an Israeli female hostage allegedly killed in an Israeli airstrike. The IDF is in contact with her family and are keeping them updated with all available information. The name of the victim has not been cleared for publication. Meanwhile, senior defense officials are saying that Hamas has given up on its demand for an end to the war, and a ceasefire for hostage deal is closer than ever. According to the officials, a humanitarian deal could be reached that will include a 42-day ceasefire for the return of some of the 101 hostages held captive in Gaza. Defense Minister Katz told Channel 12 that he was pressing for a deal to return hostages, even if it meant Israel has to pay a heavy price, including the release of terrorists held in Israeli prisons. According to officials, a deal is now closer than it's been for a year, when just over a month into the war, 50 hostages were released during a mediated pause in fighting. The war then renewed. The Defense Ministry said that in this case as well, the war would continue after the pause in fighting. Day 415 of the war in Gaza, the IDF announced that it killed Khalid Abu Deka, the commander of the Islamic Jihad rocket unit in Deir el-Balach in central Gaza. Abu Deka was killed while operating from within an Israeli-designated humanitarian zone. He was responsible for rocket fire during the Hamas onslaught on October 7th and numerous attacks on Israeli forces during the course of the war. The IDF also announced the killing of 5 Hamas terrorists who took part in the October 7th attack, leading the massacre and kidnapping of civilians from the Kisufim area. Ground operations are deepening. The Kfir Brigade is operating in Bet Lahia, eliminating terrorists in face-to-face battles and destroying terror infrastructure. Division 162 continues dismantling the Hamas in Jabalia. Hamas terrorists were eliminated after entering an area where IDF forces were operating. And the IDF announced the death of a soldier in the Jabalia fighting. He is Staff Sergeant Ron Epstein, age 19, from Nesher. The number of IDF fallen since October 7th of last year is now 804.
Well, all over the world, member states of the International Criminal Court are reacting to the court's issuance of arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Let's take a look at the world's reactions. Anti-Semitic. That's the word the Israeli Prime Minister used to describe the recent decision by the International Criminal Court to issue arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and for former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, accusing them both of war crimes in Gaza.
The anti-Semitic decision of the International Court in The Hague is a modern Dreyfus trial, and it will end the same way.
The controversial decision to issue the warrants was made by Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, who consulted various experts on the decision, many of whom were known for their anti-Israel bias in the first place. Israel is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, nor are they a member of the court, meaning the ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel, unless the UN Security Council makes a formal recommendation to investigate, which happened last year. However, many nations who are members of the ICC are rejecting the move as a politicization of the court. The United States, while not a member of the ICC, strongly condemned the move, and members of the Senate have stated explicitly they will be implementing sanctions on the ICC, as well as any member states which enforce this arrest warrant. Argentina, Czech Republic, and Hungary rejected the ICC arrest warrants as well, with Hungary even inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu to visit in defiance.
Tehát itt nincsen más választás, hanem szembe kell szegülni ezzel a döntéssel. Úgyhogy én még a mai nap során meg is fogom hívni az izraeliek miniszterelnökét, Netanyahu urat egy magyarországi látogatásra, ahol a meghívásban garantálni fogom a számára, hogyha eljön, akkor a Nemzetközi Büntetőbíróság ítéletének semmilyen hatálya nem lesz Magyarországon, és mi nem fogjuk követni az ebben foglaltakat, kizárólag az izraeli-magyar kapcsolatok minőségéből és állapotából indulunk ki, tehát kellő biztonságban és érdemi tárgyalásokat tud folytatni itt Magyarországon Izrael miniszterelnöke, ha elfogad.
While some nations have called out the hypocrisy of the ICC, others have pledged to respect the court's decision, no matter how illegitimate the court may be.
despite being allies of Israel. Canada has stated they will arrest Netanyahu if he enters the country, respecting the warrant, with the UK, Netherlands, and Italy echoing similar sentiments. Germany has not stated whether or not they will enforce the warrant and is investigating further, but they did state they're unlikely to arrest the Prime Minister in the event he enters Germany, given Germany's complex history with the Holocaust.
Well, as world reactions continue to pour in following the ICC announcement, here to speak with us about the legal implications and the legitimacy, or lack thereof, of the court itself is Professor Eugene Kontorovich, director of the International Law Department at the Kohelet Policy Forum. Professor Kontorovich, pleasure to have you on. I want to ask you to start, what are your initial reactions to this ICC arrest warrant scandal? What is the problem with ICC issuing these warrants, and is there really any truth to what they're accusing Israel of?
It's a court with no jurisdiction, investigating crimes in a state that doesn't exist, crimes that never happened. People have compared it to the Dreyfus trial, but it's much worse. In the affair of Dreyfus, there was in fact spying for the Germans, but it wasn't done by Dreyfus. In this case, the crime they're accusing Israel of, starvation, simply hasn't happened at all.
Do member states of the ICC have the option of rejecting this move by the court? I mean, what are the consequences of states such as Hungary flat out rejecting such measures? Can other nations even be persuaded to do as Hungary is doing?
Yeah, one thing the ICC is really short of is consequences, except perhaps for very vulnerable states like Israel. Even those heads of state who they have indicted have not really faced any consequences. And I think countries are free to act based on what they see as just and sound, given that the ICC has acted entirely outside of its jurisdiction, as many countries have previously said.
Now, let's talk about the worst case scenario. Practically speaking, what problems do these warrants bring for the state of Israel? I know you just mentioned that there aren't a lot of consequences. What could the consequences be, and what precedent is being set here by the ICC investigating a non-member state democratic country?
So clearly, this case is unprecedented in so many ways, and they're doing a lot of legal firsts to get their case against Israel. But it's not so much about the warrants themselves. Everybody knows that Netanyahu is not going to stand trial in The Hague any more than Mohammed Deif, who's dead. The point is to be another talking point in a diplomatic war against Israel, to justify boycotts against Israel and create an increasingly diplomatically hostile climate. Whether that succeeds or not is really going to depend on how countries react, and in particular how the United States and Israel react. It does not create a reality. It seeks to create a reality. At the same time, the precedent now is that non-member states like the United States can have their officials investigated. Maybe the ICC is going to decide that the Islamic State in the Levant, ISIS, is a state, and investigate President Obama for his war against ISIS, where even in the Battle of Mosul, 10,000 civilians were killed trying to get out 5,000 ISIS terrorists.
Now, is there any legal recourse or any recourse at all? I mean, what happens for these states that don't abide by the ICC? Are they kicked out? Is there a way to peacefully dissolve the ICC? Is that a discussion being had now? What can be done to push back?
So I think a very important thing to push back is having countries quit the ICC. Membership is the ICC's lifeblood. And already countries have previously started quitting the court due to other reasons. The Philippines has quit. There have been a lot of threats of quitting in Africa. If countries like Hungary, like Argentina, that see this as unjustified, take it to the next level and actually leave the court, I think that would fundamentally shake the court. Two prime ministers of Australia have already called, former prime ministers, have already called on their country to quit. And I think after that country's elections in May, that may indeed happen. I think we might even see Canada, after their elections, considering quitting the ICC. And all of that would shake the ICC to the core. I think countries need to realize this is not the ICC they signed up for. It had great promise, and it has given the opposite.
Now, we are almost out of time, but I just wanted to ask you quickly, Is there a place in the international community for international law? Because just as a result of this war, we've seen the ICJ been weaponized, the lawfare being used against the Jewish state. Now we see the ICC. Is there a place for this that's actually appropriate, that's actually helpful? Because what we've seen so far, not so much.
So there's a difference between international law and international institutions. There's definitely a place for international law. That's why Israel abides by it and takes care to abide by it, takes care not to target civilians, and takes care to do other things required by international law. But there's a difference between law and the institutions created to enforce it or that purport to speak in its name. Those are really no better than their memberships and their staffs, and the ICC is an unaccountable rogue institution.
All right, well, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you, Professor Kontorovich, for your insight today.
Take care, Emily.
Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended his aide, Eli Feldstein, who is accused of leaking a classified document that allegedly undermined Israel's war effort and hostage negotiations. Netanyahu dismissed the accusations as a political attack. More on this from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a 9-minute video on his X account Saturday evening, defending his aide, Eli Feldstein, who has been under arrest since last month for allegedly leaking a classified document. Netanyahu dismissed the accusations as a political attack.
אבל המטרה שלו ברורה, לפגוע בי ולפגוע בכם, המוני אזרחי ישראל שתומכים במדיניות שאני מוביל בשמכם ומטעמכם.
Feldstein, a junior aide, is accused of leaking documents that undermined the war effort and complicated hostage negotiations. It remains unclear whether he acted alone or under Netanyahu's orders. Netanyahu, in his video, insisted Feldstein would never harm state security and criticized the selective investigation, claiming previous leaks were ignored. Last week, the court extended Feldstein's detention until Wednesday. His lawyer, Oded Severai, argued that Feldstein believed he was acting on the Prime Minister's behalf. If convicted of transferring classified information with intent to harm the state, Feldstein could face life imprisonment. He is also charged with illicit possession of classified information and obstruction of justice. Feldstein allegedly leaked the document, stolen from an IDF database by an IDF non-commissioned officer, in an attempt to sway public opinion against a Gaza hostage deal, after 6 hostages were murdered, including Hirsch Goldberg-Polin. The document, cited in the German newspaper Bild, reportedly reinforced Netanyahu's stance against negotiating with Hamas.
And in some international news, multiple anti-Semitic incidents and violent riots have been reported in cities across the U.S. and Canada. These seemingly peaceful protests often take no time escalating into major violence. And so far, multiple arrests have been reported. More on this from ILTV's Devo Klein.
At least 4 people have been arrested in Montreal, according to Canadian media, after a protest organized outside a NATO meeting quickly escalated into major violence. Rioters smashed windows of nearby establishments, set cars ablaze, and some were even seen doing a Nazi salute. The violence escalated to clashes with police as pro-Hamas rioters teared up the city of Montreal. The protest also saw the burning of an effigy of the Israeli Prime Minister, an act that is yet to receive attention by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This comes after Trudeau had endorsed the ICC arrest warrant on Netanyahu, claiming that as a founding member, Canada will uphold any ruling coming out of the ICC. And some 300 miles away in Rochester, New York, 4 university students were arrested and charged with felony criminal mischief after CCTV footage identified them as the perpetrators behind the viral wanted posters. Hung across the University of Rochester campus, these wanted posters depicted Jewish staff members in a direct targeting against them. And in another incident at Columbia University, silent protesters attended the speech of Israeli Axios journalist Barak Ravid on campus, only to walk out in protest before he even began his lecture. The students were adorned with keffiyehs, a demonstration that the Columbia campus has been seeing all too often. While Israel Defense Forces fight to return the hostages still captive in Gaza, the international arena proves to be its own violent front.
And now moving on to some positive news after that difficult story, let's have a look at a unique winery, a bustling vineyard located in the middle of the desert. Yatir Winery serves as a regional symbol of perseverance and Israeli out-of-the-box thinking.
Located at the southern end of the Judean hills, the Yatir region has a rich history of wine production. The impressive ancient wine press here stands as a testament to the developed wine industry that dates back to the reign of the kings of Judah. From the destruction of the Second Temple to the onset of the Islamic period, Jewish community thrived in this area, growing and processing grapes and olives. The region was renowned for its fine vines, with wines exported to Egypt, Rome, and across Israel. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, envisioned the Negev blooming. Against expert advice deeming the region too dry for planting trees, he persisted. Replace the experts, he declared. Today, the Yatir forest, spanning 40,000 dunams, is one of Israel's largest forests. Named after the ancient Levite city of Yatir, the forest is a green oasis, a hiking site, and a model for combating desertification. Nestled within this forest are the Yatir winery vineyards. The Yatir winery, founded in 2000 at the foot of the Israelite Tel Aviv fort, is a collaboration between local vine growers and the Carmel winery. This exclusive winery produces 150,000 bottles annually and has become a symbol of the region. Yatir wines are celebrated both locally and internationally, consistently receiving high scores and medals.
המלחמה תפסה אותנו מיד לאחר חג סוכות, שאנחנו עוד היינו באמצע העברת היין לחביות. חלק מהצוות יצא למילואים, אבל אני חושב שהצלחנו לעמוד בכל היעדים שרצינו.
The Yatir vineyards are planted at altitudes up to 900 meters above sea level. Each plot has unique soil compositions, slopes, and angles, creating ideal conditions for quality red grape varieties. Cool mornings, sunny days, and cold nights contribute to the distinctive land.
חשוב לנו שהיין הישראלי ימשיך לשגרר את ישראל באופן הטוב ביותר ולהביא את המיוחדות שלנו. אנחנו ממשיכים לייצר פה יין על גבול המדבר, ואנחנו כאן.
With over 70 different plots, each vineyard in the Yatir forest has its own identity. This careful attention to detail, combined with innovative technology, ensures the highest quality wines. From the meticulous cultivation of grape varieties to the harvesting, fermentation, aging, and bottling processes, Yatir Winery is committed to excellence.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And let's take a look at the weather forecast. Rainy showers are expected around most of the country tonight, with lows of around 11 degrees Celsius or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see more rainy showers alongside cloudy skies, seeing highs of about 16 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.